Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
All right. Hey, Kenny, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Tom. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
I would like to introduce you to a couple of people here. One that we've already talked to, Kortney Dalrymple. She's the director at Hayden Beach Volleyball. Welcome, Kortney.
Hey, Kortney.
Thanks for having me.
Kortney has brought a friend with her, Jaden Hamil. Jaden is a performance dietitian at Florida State. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Great. Welcome to our little podcast. We appreciate you guys being on today.
Yeah, welcome, Jaden.
Thank y'all for having me.
Sure. Today, what we wanted to talk about was we're gearing up towards fall sports. Student athletes are starting to get back into sort of practices. As a nutritionist and a performance dietitian, what we really want to talk about today was around sort of those needs that those student athletes have, and what lessons we can impart, or you can. We're just here to listen. But before we get into that, why don't you give us a little bit of background on sort of what made you decide to get into performance dietitian and how you know Kortney? Is that a good story? Is it like a Mexican, bar and, margaritas or exchange?
We can't disclose that.
Okay.
It's not as fun as that, but it's still a good story.
Okay, good.
Awesome.
I did take a little bit of a scenic route to get to where I am now, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But I went to the University of Alabama during my undergrad, and I got exercise science and food nutrition degrees from there. I proceeded to get my master's at Mississippi State University with the goal of being a performance researcher, not necessarily a dietitian. So I really wanted to work at the Gatorades, the Powerades, the huge supplement companies, because athletes fascinated me. How can I just make these athletes better? How can I make them perform? It's just everything they do just fascinates me. So when I went to Mississippi State specifically, because of the small world that it is, because there was a professor there that used to work at Gatorade, who I believe actually hired Kortney at Gatorade.
There it is.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So while I was at Mississippi State in the lab doing a lot of research, actually I got the opportunity to go work for Kortney just from a small little consultant role, basically. And I would just kind of help her in trips that she needed a little extra hands on. And so she was going on a trip to a national team or professional team, collegiate team, whatever it was, and she just needs some extra hands. I got hired just to come and help her on those trips. And it was fantastic. Kortney is great. She's a workhorse, and she was great to work with. However, during that time with Kortney, she actually kind of helped me get to where I am today, because I know I listened to Kortney's episode this past week, and she talked about how when she went to the University of Georgia, it just didn't work out in the PhD program. And the same thing happened to me. I actually started a PhD program trying to pursue my goals as becoming this extremely awesome exercise scientist and going to work for Gatorade or Powerade. And just my heart was just not in it. So when I say that, I just mean that I respected the research. I loved doing it. But the fact that we were just doing studies on athletes and we would have them come in and then they would leave. I never saw what their progress was. I never saw if they actually took the research and worked with it. And the same thing with Gatorade. So I would go on these trips with Kortney and help her out a little bit. And I would see these athletes and we would give them all of this great feedback. So what their sweat rate is, what carbohydrates should they be having, how much should they be having, things like that. And then we would leave. And I would never see these athletes again unless I just kept up with them on ESPN or whatever it was. And my heart just was not in that. It was like, I want to be with these athletes day by day and make sure they get this information. So I actually quit the PhD program and I started working at the University of Alabama in their sports, or basically in their athletic program as a nutrition assistant, and then worked my way up, and then was going back to school to become a dietitian. So got hired on there when I became on a dietitian, or as I was working, becoming a dietitian. And then after that, I got hired at Florida State. So Kortney actually helped me get to where I was today. And now she is the director of Hayden Beach, like y'all said, and I've been the consultant dietitian for them as well.
Very cool. Kortney, what grade would you give Jaden when she was her performance review? If we want to do that right now, what was it? was it does not meets or
exceeds expectations.
Yeah.
So Kortney's kind of a badass. So she just gets people to get out of PhD programs. Is kind of
There you go.
that's the theme we have.
If you have doubts, talk to Kortney. She'll talk you out of it.
Do you really want to do this? Do you really, really want to do this? So.
It's okay.
So Jaden, let's talk about student athletes. I mean, one of the things, like I said, when we opened is we see a lot of student athletes come into the recovery lounge. Unfortunately, we're trying to get them sooner because they're coming in sort of tired after like a regional game and getting ready for nationals or whatever else. And what we're trying to do is get them into a regular program to kind of take care of themselves. From a nutritional standpoint, let's just start at the basics. I think everyone just sort of applies, shall I say, adult or standard nutrition to sort of student athletes. If you can help us kind of understand, maybe let's just start off that way. How should a student athlete treat differently from adult and or other just kind of standard students eating, chicken fingers and fries?
Well, that's actually a huge lesson when we have these athletes come in, because we just have to. So all athletes that come into us, whether it was when I was in Alabama or here at Florida State, they all came to our programs because they're fantastic athletes. But in high school, they ate like their cohort. They ate like high school kids. They ate what their parents supplied them. They trained how their current coaches did back then. So they basically come to us with this. Yes, they were elevated, but they weren't putting in all the extra stuff. Does that make sense? So necessarily, they're not sleeping how they're supposed to be. They're not eating how they're supposed to be. They're not training how they're supposed to be. So when they come into the collegiate setting, that's when we make a lot of changes. So, okay, yes, you performed really great eating that way at a high school level, but now everyone in college is good. Now we have to make you better than what you already were. So we have to set that standard even higher. Okay, now you're going to take care of yourself. We're going to eat right. You're going to sleep. You're going to have a great training. You're going to have all these great coaches that help you. So let's make you elevate yourself as an athlete. That way you can continue to perform at your best level. So that's what we do when we come here. So sometimes we have to have a few heart-to-hearts about what maybe we have to make some changes about certain foods. And it can be difficult because a lot of times it's comfort food. So if you've been growing up on the same thing that your mom made you every day, you're not going to want to change that. And we don't try to make huge drastic changes, but we try to make small lifestyle changes. That way you still have some of your comfort foods, but we're also making sure we're hitting those performance goals. So it can be very, very tricky because athletes' needs are just so much greater. So when it comes to calories, their calorie needs are exponentially higher. Their carbohydrate needs are higher. Their protein needs are higher. So whatever it is, we just have to find that balance, and specifically with their sport and what their goals are. So if they're a basketball player versus a football player versus a cross country runner, finding out, okay, where their needs are, and then finding how we can meet those needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think so. Let's dive into that specifically. So like one of the things that is kind of interesting is I'm assuming some of these student athletes are like, oh, paleo, I got to do a lean protein kind of diet, and carbohydrates are bad because that's what everyone tells us, right? Carbs are bad.
Absolutely.
Help us kind of understand how you kind of break that kind of cycle.
Well, that's one thing. As long as social media is around, I'm going to have a job. So that's definitely one thing is that not only with parents and culture do athletes eat the way they do, it's also what's going on with social media. So like you said, carbs have been kind of deemed as bad and paleo good or keto good, and nothing is good or bad. It's just how we can configure it into their diet. So in ways that they can perform. So you're right. I definitely have to battle with those all the time, especially low carb right now. But if you're an athlete listening, low carb is never the way to go. All athletes need carbohydrates, and to what extent you need them, that's definitely somewhere we can work with a sports dietitian to make sure you hit your goals and what's needed for your particular sport. Because some sports may have higher carbohydrate needs than other sports and may have different cycling or different timing of those carbohydrates. So definitely important. But how do I battle those is relationships. So one thing I've learned as being a sports dietitian is to never tell an athlete no. So if I have an athlete that comes in and goes, hey, Jaden, I'm doing paleo, or hey, Jaden, I'm doing keto. Do you think I should be on it? I can't say no, but it's no, but here are the reasons why. Why do you want to be it? Okay, you want to be on it because your parents are on it, or you want to be on it because an athlete you follow on social media is on it? Okay, well, let's follow those reasons why and then go from there. Does that make sense? Because if I tell someone no, so if I'm like, okay, no, what's the first thing you want to do?
Yeah.
You want to do that. You just shut off.
You want to do that item. So
yeah.
Like,
and then you don't listen.
Right. If you're like, hey, Jane, can I do keto? I said, no. You're like, well, I'm going to do keto because I told you no. So it's no, but here are the reasons why. But the first thing I have to do is develop the relationship with the athlete, because even if I say yes or no, if they don't trust me, they're not going to listen. So developing that relationship with the athlete, finding out why they want to do that particular diet. So if it's keto, okay, why do you want to do it? Is it because you're a long distance runner and you feel that you can run on fat better than carbohydrates? Okay, the research doesn't show that. So finding out ways of making sure that I can go with the athlete without being too blunt, and making sure that we find the reasons why they want to do it and direct them in a way that can go to their performance and meet them where they are.
So do you see, I'm sorry, for going back on that, when we talk about social media and all the pressures and the stress that the kids are under these days, are you seeing a larger amount of eating disorders within that? Because like trying to fuel an athlete and then also having those extra pressures, they're either eating more or not eating anywhere what they should be eating. Is that getting worse, or is that just a thing that normally happens?
Absolutely. So with body image and things like that, it definitely has made it worse. So like I have male and female athletes. A lot of times people just think it's female athletes that have these issues, but I have male and female athletes that pull up their Instagram. They pull up whatever, the NBA, NFL, whoever it is, a beach volleyball player, they'll pull it up and be like, why don't I look like this person? And it's like, okay, not necessarily. Instagram, social media, all that stuff is a highlight reel. Okay. And each person is completely different. So all of us are different. Your teammates are different. Even beach volleyball, like you can have two girls playing and each girl may look drastically different, but they're both elite players. It's just how they are and they're built differently. But we have those battles almost daily as a sports dietitian, because sometimes we just get caught up in that. Like, oh, I have to look like her because she plays so good. Oh, I have to look like him because he's super muscular and strong. Okay. People are just built different. Like if you look at the NBA, you have the Kevin Durant's and they have the LeBron Jameses. So people are built different, but they're still heavy elite players. And it's finding and meeting with the players and figuring out, okay, why do you want to look like that? And okay, is that going to help your performance? Because what you look like does not dictate your performance. Like, I don't know if y'all saw a lot of the social media a few years ago about Tom Brady having like a dad bod and stuff. And it's like, okay, but have you seen all the Super Bowl rings? Does it matter that he has a dad bod?
Count the rings.
So it doesn't matter. So it's just that social media has definitely affected my job and the players when it comes to physical attributes of the players. But it's constantly reminding the players that everyone is built different. And everyone is built different for their sport as well. So it's just making sure that we meet the players where they're at and finding out why their goals are the way they are. Because if it's just for aesthetics, that's not why we play sports. We don't play beach volleyball for aesthetics. We don't play basketball, football, whatever it is for aesthetics. We play it because we love our sport and we're good at it. So just making sure that we reiterate to those athletes. But yes, it has been very difficult with social media. But like I said, it'll keep me employed. So
yeah, definitely. I see it in adults. And adult athletes quite a bit. I can't imagine that the kids are probably much worse on that. And I'm assuming in a lot of cases there's some underlying things that drive it to that. Some, I'd say, home issues or friend issues or some other stuff that's behind the scenes that you probably, even as a dietitian, you turn into more of a sports psychologist in that same sense, as you're trying to figure out what's triggering these behaviors and then getting the best performance out of them. I know we had that conversation with Kortney as well. It's got to be a kind of a fun challenge in a way, because you can make a difference.
Yes. And especially, and I don't know if y'all have had to deal with this as well, but NIL has just started. And so that will also come into a play. And for those of you who don't know what NIL is, it's name, image, and likeness. So now collegiate athletes can make money based off certain deals, certain trade, whatever it is. And so social media is a big part of that as well. So having a big social media presence can definitely help in that NIL standpoint. But And that can also affect, body image and ways we act on social media and where our hearts are as an athlete. So just making sure that we're still here for the main reasons, because you want to play your sport, you love your sport, and you want to excel at it. So definitely you may see more of that too with the NIL movement that's happening right now.
And
so Kortney, so go ahead.
I was going to I have a question for Jaden too. So Jaden, you work with your certain sports at the collegiate level, and you see them every day or at least every week when they're in school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great to get that buy-in. You have the opportunity to get that buy-in. Now, how do you think we could help bridge the gap from that high school to collegiate setting where, in high school, we only see these certain players during the in-season or when they're around the coaches. We might not see them every day. How do you think we could help them bridge the gap in nutrition, hydration, recovery, so that gap is not so big once they kind of go from high school to the collegiate level, where now they're going to see you every day. Everything might be changing with them, might be changing their whole nutrition, hydration, sleep regimen. So do you have any recommendations on that?
I think for the athletes that are doing that and they want to play in collegiate, potentially pro, or just even collegiate, I think joining clubs like Hayden Beach or having some kind of support system around them would definitely be very beneficial for the athletes, because you can tell when the athletes come in who's kind of had a little extra attention when it comes to that area. You can tell in the weight room, you can tell in the classroom, and you can tell nutrition wise. So you can see the people who have definitely keyed in on their nutrition. You can tell the people who are taking care of their sleep and they're getting treatment, going to places like the recovery lounge before they even come to, college, whatever it is. So having those really good support systems like Hayden Beach or going to schools like IMG, which I know I personally cannot afford, but just making sure that you go to a club near you that takes care of you, and making sure that, okay, like they're prescribing, lifts for me to do on my own. Are they safe? Okay, they're telling me that I need to meet with a dietitian, as opposed to telling me I need to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. So just making sure that you have a good support system. And if you don't have a good support system, reach out to, your local clubs, reach out to a dietitian in your area, reach out somewhere. And sometimes that can be expensive, but if you join a good club, like I said, Hayden Beach, I'm probably putting like 3 plugs right now for that, but that has an overall support system, that would be great, because those are just going to help you transition to college easier. Do you have to be in those clubs? Absolutely not. You can transition, maybe a little bit harder, but you still can transition. But just making sure that maybe if we can't afford to join those clubs or we can't afford a dietitian, look up some good stuff on social media, follow some good strength coaches that are, volleyball specific or triathlon specific or whatever is on social media. Reach out to them, shoot them a DM, go from there. Have people recommend that good people to talk to in your area. People definitely want to see other people succeed. So just finding people in that area that can help you. So like if you are right now, if you're listening and you're an aspiring high school athlete and you don't know how to get your nutrition right, feel free to send me an email and we can go through and try to find someone or even myself that can help you. So just making sure to find professionals in your area that don't backtrack you, because that's the last thing you want, is to go to someone who is just not a professional and is just giving you bad advice, and you either hurt yourself in the weight room, you hurt yourself during training, whatever it is, just making sure you find a good atmosphere and environment around you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So let's I like using a specific example, because that way it's a little bit easier to glom onto. So let's talk about sort of a volleyball player. So we've got a girl volleyball player. So maybe Kortney, we can start with you and then move to Jaden as far as that goes. So Kortney, when that freshman comes into into Hayden Beach, and you see what's going on, how do you start that conversation? So I know a lot about kind of endurance sports, so I can probably talk a little bit about kind of nutrition and what we do on the endurance sports. And I'm probably about 80% there. And then the other 20%, I'm probably completely wrong. So, but when it comes to a volleyball player, they walk in, they're pretty good. They got natural talent, right? You got this person with natural talent. What specific sort of nutrition and hydration things do you start trying to get them to change to at the high school level? And then once they're handed off to Jaden, where do we go from there? So let's talk volleyball specifically. Let's talk about sort of what they need to do from their diet, and what you see typically when they come in.
Yeah, so I'm still learning the high school level. This is actually only my first full year working with high school athletes, because I transitioned mainly from pros and collegiate sports now down to high school athletes. So I'm kind of still learning them a little bit. The biggest thing is building a relationship with them and having them trust you first. So I wouldn't really talk much about anything in terms of nutrition, hydration, anything until we have a little bit of a relationship going on. They feel open just to talk to me about everyday, their everyday life, school, how practice is going, everything like that, before I kind of start making suggestions there. And then, how I do it is I open up the opportunity for them. So meaning I give them the resource like, hey, this is my background. I'm going to open up opportunities for you guys, whether it's educational. We had some educational sessions earlier this year where I just opened up different topics that I talked about, and I just made it free for the girls to come in, listen over Zoom, or to come in and be live with us, and just to get a little bit better understanding about nutrition, hydration, recovery. And then I provide them my background, and I want them to take that first step, because I don't want to just come at them and say, hey, you need to change this, or you need to do this to be a better player. I want to open that door, but I want them to take that first step so they feel comfortable enough to do that. Once they kind of know my background a little bit, then, if they come to me and they say, hey, what would you suggest about, my nutrition or my hydration, then I would probably start making some suggestions and mainly ask them questions first. Like, what are you currently doing? What do you have any issues? So do you struggle with fatigue? Are you sleeping well? Do you feel like you have enough energy during practice or during a tournament? Where do your issues lie? So I kind of ask more questions and open-ended questions and have them kind of talk through it. And then we go from there. So once I kind of build that relationship and we go from there, in terms of a sand volleyball player, the biggest issues we see are during tournaments, in terms of hydration and energy. At least that's what I see. So we've been having tournaments at Hyden Beach this year since, I think, March. And ever since May 1st onwards, we have one almost every weekend. There hasn't been somebody who didn't cramp in that tournament, whether it was one person, whether it was up to, we had almost 5 during a tournament that either cramped, had heat exhaustion, had to stop because they're about to go into heat exhaustion, threw up. I mean, all those scenarios happened during these tournaments over the weekends. And it has a lot to do with eating or not eating. A lot of these players, like, once we ask the questions, like, oh, you didn't eat today before this tournament. Okay, that's something that we need to work on. Or they're only consuming water and not electrolytes in any fluids, or not eating anything during the tournament. So usually it's energy related, fatigue related, or hydration related that I see in sand volleyball players. And it's tough because a lot of the players, they're starting to realize that their hydration and nutrition has a lot to do with issues that they have in the tournaments. And, if someone's not there talking to them about it, how are they going to know? They kind of think, oh, I'm just too hot, or it's hot and humid out. And they think it's an external factor rather than an internal factor.
So Jaden, when they come to you, then what is, you get this volleyball player, what are the top kind of 2 to 3 things? Is it still hydration and nutrition? Is it just diets completely upside down because they can live forever and they burn everything? What do you see as sort of the big factors?
For volleyball specifically, it can change. So Kortney hit the nail on the head. So the first thing I have to do is establish a relationship with all the athletes. So when they come in, just making sure they're comfortable with me, because for some reason, when people see dietitian, they just assume that we're the food police, and that's that's just not it. So first I just have to establish a relationship with them, make sure they're comfortable with me. They can talk to me about their issues, things like that. When it comes to your very high level athletes, when it comes to them, usually a lot of them already kind of have their things in order. They have maybe have their hydration in order, or they have their eating schedule right, they have the contents of what they're eating right. So with me being there and establishing that relationship, I try to find where those gaps are and where I can best benefit that individual athlete. So when it comes to volleyball players, Kortney is right, making sure they're hydrated. I don't know if y'all been to like a weekend of matches. It is insane. Mm-hmm. They are hot. They're on the sand. They play 2 or 3 matches a day, 2 days back to back, even more. I'm not sure, but I know our home tournaments here, that's what I've seen. And it's just a hot day. So just making sure that they hydrate. Hydration should be a state. So one thing about that I feel a lot of athletes have issues with that come in from high school into collegiate is that they think that hydration is just like a weekend thing. Like, oh, I have matches this weekend, I'm going to hydrate on Friday and I'll be good. No, hydration when you get to college, well, before you get to college, it should happen too, is a state. We're a collegiate athlete. We should always be hydrating. We should always try to be hydrated. So making sure we instill that into them. Also, like Kortney said, making sure they're eating. Those are long games. They are long weekends, and it's hard to eat. So if you have a match first thing in the morning, you may have one in the afternoon, maybe one later. When do I eat? Where do I eat? It's also hot outside, so I may just have my adrenaline up and it's too hot and I don't feel that hunger feeling. So it's finding there where I can fill those gaps in. So finding foods that can make sure their appetites are good, make sure they have carbohydrates in them to fuel them. So I know that's like kind of a lot of different answers in one, but it's finding where those individual athletes are and finding where those gaps are. So like Kortney said, is it the athlete that's not eating breakfast? Okay, I need to make sure she eats breakfast beforehand. Okay, is it the athlete that cramps up every single time? Okay, I need to make sure I have heavy electrolyte products for her. So making sure that she has the hydration and those products to get her through a whole weekend. So it's just finding where those individual needs are and meeting them. But essentially, Kortney, I think we have the same issues here in collegiate. Hydration, timing of fueling, and just making sure we can get through a weekend. So just making sure we can hit all of those goals is pretty much the same issues that I've had with previous volleyball players. So
if you think about it, I mean, these girls, whether they're playing or not, they're still standing outside in the sun or, under a canopy. Mm-hmm. It could be, some of our tournaments are 7, 8, 9 hours long. And they could play, I just played a tournament last weekend. I played 9 sets in, 8 hours. And even though you might not be playing or warming up, you're still outside in 90-degree heat, 75% humidity for that time. You're still sweating. So you have to make sure that hydration, not only during the event, but that you're coming into that, just like Jaden said, your hydration is a state, like not just starting, okay, I'm going to start Saturday morning and, make sure I'm drinking during the tournament. No, like you want to make sure that you're prepping all week and making sure that you're focusing on your hydration during the entire week as well. At Hyden Beach, we started doing daily morning body weights, pre and post practice. So taking a body weight before practice and after practice, just to get a better understanding of how these ladies are hydrating during their session, just to give them a little bit of education. And then we also started doing some sweat testing as well, just to better understand, how much they lose from a hydration standpoint, from an electrolyte standpoint, and what they're also consuming during that. So they can learn a little bit about themselves because everybody is so different. To give you an example, I did a little bit of testing in these past couple weeks. And we had players that, consumed absolutely no carbohydrate, no sodium, and just a little bit of fluid during that session. And they had their sweat rate was 1.4 liters per hour. So a liter is roughly, your typical Gatorade bottle. And they were only consuming just a quarter of that during the entire practice when their sweat rate was 1.4. So 1 and like a third of these over an hour. And they were practicing for over 2 hours. So it's just understanding a little bit more about themselves in hopes that we can make those small changes to better fuel and better hydrate these guys.
I think people don't realize that once they are dehydrated, that it's not just, slam a sports drink and you're good to go, that it takes a long time sometimes for you to get your hydration back to the proper levels.
Yeah.
I've heard as long as 72 hours. I don't know if that's a good number to throw out there, but yeah, it could take a day or two to certainly get that level back up to where it needs to be.
Yeah,
so.
And it all depends on the person. And plus, when you're already behind on the game and then you're trying to catch up, that can then, if you try to catch up too much and you don't really know your body well enough, that could cause a lot of GI distress. And we all know that we're not playing well under GI distress. So now you're already not feeling well and playing a match or a tournament. And now you're like, okay, well, what do I do? They kind of feel stuck a little bit. So it's just a lot about preparation and knowing your body a little bit more to kind of better prepare yourself to give your best during that training session or competition.
So Jaden, go ahead.
Just jump in. Just on the nutrition side. So what type of nutrition do you take in a beach volleyball environment? So I know on the endurance side of things that we've taken a lot more liquid stuff because we're jostling around on the run. There's gels, there's quick energies that way. There's certain things for longer distances that you would do, but what types would you take in the middle of a tournament? You're going to play all day on and off. Is it solid foods or is it you go to more liquid, more gels the same way? Or
sorry.
I'm gonna let Jaden answer this one, and then I'll give my 2 cents after Jaden.
It depends on the timing of the matches. And so what we try to do is prep beforehand. So just like hydration, it's a state. So like you previously mentioned, so making sure throughout the week we're staying hydrated, we're eating right. So let's say our matches are Saturday and Sunday of the week. Making sure that we have a good meal on Friday night. So making sure we have plenty of carbohydrates, lean proteins, color, which is what we call fruits and vegetables. So have a good meal Friday night. And so let's say they play Saturday morning. So depending on what time they play in the morning, it depends on what their meal should be. So if they have 3 to 4 hours before they play, I would like for them to have like a good breakfast or whatever it is. So when I say good breakfast, just have like a traditional, carbohydrates, protein, color, anything on there. However, if they play at 8 a.m., they're probably not going to wake up at 4 a.m. to eat breakfast. I'm going to guarantee that. So it just depends on how close we wake up prior to match and how soon warm up is. So and I don't know how Kortney feels about this, but traditionally when it gets to about an hour or less prior to playing, that's when I go more of the liquid route. So let's say I have an athlete that comes in, they're like, oh, Jaden, I just woke up. I play in an hour. I'm like, okay, let's do the Powerade, the Gatorade, whatever it is. So usually liquid's a little bit easier to digest. And then sometimes for a little bit more substance, we can do stuff like applesauce. So like go-go squeezes and stuff like that are easy.
Interesting.
Dried fruit in general. So there's stuff that's a little bit easier to digest about an hour prior to play. So it really just depends. And then after they play, of course, I want to get a little bit of protein in to make sure we're recovering. But it depends on when the next match is. So depending on the gap between depends on what our meals are. But traditionally, if you have a little bit of longer time, you want to make sure you get your carbohydrates and your protein in. But if you don't, we got to go for a little bit less of the actual substance. That way we don't have that GI distress that we talked about earlier. So all depends on timing in the matches, which I know is probably a terrible answer to give y'all. It's not a very specific one, but it just depends.
And just to add, I think it has a lot to do with personal preference as well. We want to make sure that they're consuming something that they feel comfortable with and that they enjoy. So, for example, we can have athletes that just are really heavy sweaters and they lose a ton of sodium in their sweat. So for those folks, I don't want to have just only sports drinks because that might cause a lot of GI distress if I'm trying to meet their hydration electrolyte needs with a 6% carbohydrate solution. That might give them GI distress because they're consuming just so much of that type of fluid. So some athletes, they like to separate out their fluid and electrolytes and their carbohydrate sources. So, for example, that could be they consume just an electrolyte water base. So that could be, LMNT. It's like a electrolyte powder that has no carbohydrate in it. That could be something like liquid IV or drip drop as their hydration needs, but then they chew on like gummies or have little pieces of granola bar, and they use that as their carbohydrate source. So it's also kind of taken in personal preference as well. For us, when we hold tournaments and run events, it's a little bit different than the collegiate setting that Jaden works in. So for us, they play, sets and matches all throughout the day with not too much rest in between. Probably max is about 30 minutes. So a lot of our athletes end up just kind of picking throughout the day, whether that's, a quarter of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a half a bar or some chews that they like to consume. They don't really have any full meal like a whole sandwich at one time or a salad at one time, just because for us, our system's a little bit different where they don't have more than usually 30 to 45 minutes in between sets until they're done with their day.
So Jaden, let's switch a little bit over to kind of the football setting, because we're fortunate enough, Tom and I were able to interview former defensive lineman for the Patriots, Keontae Davis. And Keontae started college at 235 maybe, something ended like college at 275, 285 of just, rip snorting, lean power. Right. So again, kind of doing this kind of similar thing, when you get a high school athlete that gets a lot of social pressure about, I need pre-workout supplements, I need to pack on weight, I need to pack on power. They're probably, trying to bench more than they should. They're trying to get that power in, right? I mean, we have high school kids that come in and, brag about what their squats are, and they're tremendous, right? For high school kids. Yeah. And I'm thinking they're poor joints. And then, you get people like Keontae that come in and, they're packing on 40 pounds throughout that. How do you help control that sort of, I got to get bigger because the sport requires you to get bigger to a certain extent, right? Or does it? Like we said, everyone's a little bit different. I mean, Tom Brady's a little bit different than Mahomes, but the general rule is like, if you're playing defense, you need to be able to push people around, and that requires weight. How do you, when football comes in, how do you control that sort of in a way that doesn't injure them or gets them in a healthier way to get that weight?
So it's pretty similar with all sports. They definitely have that attitude when they come in, like, hey, I'm playing D-line this year. I have got to gain 40 pounds. We've got to do this. So people do come in with that attitude. Like, I specifically work with basketball. And so with our sport, we are a very tough division, ACC division. And so our guys, they want to come in and gain weight because it gets tough down there at the post. Oh, yeah. They got to make sure they can throw those bows out, and they want to gain 20, 40 pounds to make sure they can tolerate that and play.
That's elbows for anybody that doesn't know what the bows are.
Yeah. So just making sure that we can make sure to put the mass on in a healthy way, because if we put on mass too quickly, it can hurt the joints. Like you said those knees, ouch. So it could hurt that. However, it's really coming in and making sure that we have a good system together. So making sure the strength coach, myself, the coaches, and the athletic trainers are all on the same page. So usually what happens when an athlete comes in, they're like, hey, I want to gain 20, 30 pounds. Okay, let's talk to your position coach. Okay, is that about the range for his position? Cool. Okay. Weight in the weight room. Are we making sure that he's on that system to gain weight? Okay, cool. I'm going to work with the strength coach on timing and making sure that, like, okay, his lift is at that time. So I'm going to make sure that he has stuff beforehand, stuff afterwards. And then I'm going to work with his eating schedule. So making sure that being a collegiate athlete, we burn a lot of calories. So gaining weight can be tough. So on top of weights and practice, I got to make sure they have enough calories to sustain that without getting injured, because underfueling can lead to injuries. So making sure they have enough calories to withstand their current load on top of that weight gain. So making sure, for example, like right now I'm working with a few athletes to gain weight. So this morning I came in, they had a lift, made sure that they had shakes that had ungodly amount of calories in them and a lot of protein to make sure, and go from there. Also, I handle all the supplement bases. So like you said, they may be amped to take a pre-workout, may be amped to get their own supplement powder, whatever it is. So I have to make sure that our athletes are taking products that are, not going to make them pop up positive on an NCAA drug test, or athletes who participate in other stuff like swim and things like that. They also have WADA drug tests. So just making sure that they fall within those categories. So making sure they're taking safe product that's actually going to help them. Because a lot of times we have athletes that take product that really they're just peeing out and wasting their money on. So making sure they're taking product that's beneficial and making sure their diet's right. Because a supplement is what it says. It's a supplement to your diet. So making sure that diet is right first and making sure we're getting all those calories in, and then we'll go to the supplements after that. But it is hard, but it's definitely like you said, the football player you spoke with gained 30, 40 pounds. So it's definitely doable. But just making sure that your support system is all on the same page and making sure we take care of you. And making sure that athlete is playing at a weight that's good for them. Because sometimes some players can gain that weight, but it's not a good playing weight for them. They don't feel fast enough. They don't feel quick enough. So, okay, let's back off a little bit. So let's make some changes and go from there. So just making sure we find that comfort weight for them and then getting there and maintaining it. But it can be difficult because sometimes when we think of gaining weight, we think of all the bad stuff. We're like, okay, I just need some ice cream. I need this. I need calories. So it's finding that balance to make sure we're also giving them the right setup to gain that muscle mass. So making sure they're eating more of the leaner proteins, making sure we're getting a high quality source of protein, making sure we're getting the carbohydrates in to help with that protein. So it's a lot of little things into one that we make for individualized athletes. So I know that was a lot.
No. That's great. And I'm finding that anytime Kortney comes on, the bingo is if somebody says something about pee. So
that's a winner.
It's not a complete,
add another quote.
It's not a complete podcast unless there's a talk about pee.
I feel like with our jobs, it's just a standard conversation.
It's standard. As an endurance athlete, that's almost what we talk about all the time.
Yeah, what's your pee color?
Yeah. Question on the supplements. How do you suss out what are the good, clean supplements? And what advice could you give to people who are considering supplements or what they should look at in that sense with the fact that, that might be useless for them. But aside from that, what might trigger a positive test?
Okay, so that is a fantastic question and we get it a lot. So the first thing you want to do is just make sure your supplement is third-party tested. So essentially what that means is just making sure that someone is testing that product to see what on the back of the label actually matches what's in the product. Supplements are not FDA approved. So sometimes the stuff that is on the back of that label doesn't necessarily match what's in the actual bottle. And sometimes people are like, wait, what? And yes, that is a thing. So there's companies out there that third-party test these products to make sure that label does match what's in the bottle. So companies that we use are ones that I keep on hand to make sure are NSF for Sport, and they have an app. So like if you're ever interested or if you're a high school athlete out there and you're like, hey, is the product I'm taking okay? You can download that app, scan it, and see if your product is okay to take. Also, Informed Choice is another one I use as well. Informed Choice for those that are, ultra distance runners and stuff like that. They do a lot more European brands. So I know a lot of times runners and swimmers like to use more European stuff. So they have a lot of that atmosphere and those products as well. So those are both great companies that I use for our athletes here. And then, like you said, is that product beneficial? Am I taking what I'm supposed to be taking? That is definitely hard. But making sure we take the right products. Like, for example, BCAAs were kind of a huge thing coming in about a year or so ago. They still are big. We have athletes that ask about it, but taking BCAAs during a lift has been shown not to be as helpful. So making sure that okay, are you taking BCAAs? Why? Are we taking the middle of the lift? Not really going to help us too much. So no. So finding out other products like pre-workout. Pre-workout is a great one that I know y'all mentioned earlier that comes up a lot. So a lot of pre-workouts are not safe to take for a collegiate athlete. And when I say safe, I mean A, from a drug testing standpoint, and B, like your actual health. So just making sure that you are okay, because you can test positive for performance enhancements if you have over 500 milligrams of caffeine in your system at a time. So some of those pre-workouts can get up in those ranges, and making sure that, okay, like what's the caffeine content? And then what else is in the pre-workout? So what else is in there that may be in your system? So making sure it's third-party tested and safe for you to take. So those are just kind of the huge things. And then of course, there are several thousands of products out there, and just making sure that our athletes are taking lower risk products that aren't going to hurt them in any way.
Don't just buy the cheapest thing on Amazon.
No. Except
the other thing, maybe,
without doing the research.
Well, and also like some of these are endorsed by, they're they have influencers that are pushing the product that are used to be professional athletes or people that are in high profile positions that, well, if they must have looked at it, it must be okay. Right. Because you see that happening
all of the time.
They're probably not even taking them. They're just
cashing their check,
peddling them. Yeah.
That's what
they get paid really well for that.
Do what?
So they get paid really well for that.
Yes. And so that happens a lot. And also people have to remember that different organizations have different rules. So the NFL is going to have different rules than NCAA, or NBA is going to have different rules than NCAA. So it's just finding where it is, finding out if the product, because sometimes it's just hogwash. It's just not even worth it. It's just a marketing scheme. And sometimes it is helpful. So like, for example, we had a company that sent us some samples and we just had it in our office just to try it or whatever. And I had a basketball player that walked around the corner and goes, "That's Giannis's brand." And I was like,
yeah,
what? Like what?
Yeah.
And it is a good product. So it worked. That one worked out in my favor, but it was like, wait, do you even know what it is? Like, do you even know what's in that bottle? But yeah, the marketing gets to like no one's business. So, but yeah, it helps and hurts me sometimes just trying to figure out, okay, who is marketing it? Why do they want to take it? Like, for example, we had like TB12 and stuff like that went around for a while, finding out, okay, what products, why are we taking it? Is it actually beneficial? And other products like that definitely have that huge presence behind them for the marketing standpoint for our athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they don't understand too, that even though it could be an herbal supplement or something like that, you can actually do damage to yourself. You can OD on some of this stuff if it doesn't always work with other things, or you can take too much of it. And I don't think people realize that it can be dangerous if you're just messing around with it.
And I think personally, I just think a lot of people are just trying to find the quick fix. Like,
oh yeah,
as I said earlier, work on your diet first. Like once that is 100%, then talk to your dietitian about potentially adding in some supplements. But if you're not focusing on that diet first, and you're not consuming enough calories or eating breakfast or having enough protein in your diet, then why are we even having this conversation about supplements?
But that's the reason why, right? I'm supposed to eat all this crappy food and then just pop a couple of these things and everything's good.
Y'all are so right. I have a lot of athletes that come in. They're like, "Oh, well, I'll just take this supplement." I'm like, "Oh, well, did you have breakfast?" No. I'm like,
"No."
"Oh, did you sleep last night?" No. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that supplement's just literally a Band-Aid, but you really need stitches. Like, come on, like, let's get it together." So y'all are 110% right, and it happens every day. But like I said, keeps me employed. So
there you go.
That's all good.
So I think you mentioned earlier in the podcast that with the changes in the collegiate rules now on who can promote and get paid for that. I just saw an article this morning. I think it was a gymnast that is, I think, from Ohio State, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I think she's on tap to like a $3 to $4 million signing because she's got 1 million followers on her Instagram. And oh, by the way, those followers it's not her, doing gymnasts, it's her in a bikini, right? Because that's what the 1 million people, right? So there's that.
There's a similar situation at LSU.
Yeah, maybe that's it, right? Mm-hmm. It's a body image issue, right? She's going to get paid a lot of money because that's the image that they want to portray. At the same time, she still has to perform, but now they want to get paid. I know this is a hugely complex topic, probably save it for another hour, but just if you could help us a little bit on how are you seeing that change immediately? Like, now I got to go, I may be one of those people that's going to be promoting that supplement brand, and it may not be the greatest, but the check's pretty darn big. How is collegiate sports trying to both, be respectful of that new rule, but try to live within that? Maybe that's the question I'm looking to. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yes. And honestly, I can just speak from my perspective. There are so many moving parts with it. Like, I think we're all still trying to figure it out and how we can go about it. I know from my team, like my sports nutrition staff, like we spoke about it together. And we just made sure that like we have a social media just from our department, like for Knoll Fuel is what we call it, for our athletes to follow for nutrition information. So we just posted something about, hey, like if you have a supplement company that is interested in signing you, like, please just run it by us first. Or if you cannot run it by us because of legalities, just making sure that it is a third party tested company, and please do your research. Because the one thing you have to do is when these athletes are representing someone, just making sure that they stick by their core values. Like, is this a good product? Is it going to be beneficial to me? And then making sure that it's okay, because the last thing we want our athletes to do is represent a supplement company that necessarily doesn't have high standard products in it. So I know there's a lot of legalities of how much we can talk to athletes about it, because essentially it's them as their own business. But just making sure that, they use a third party tested company, and go from there. Like, we've already had some athletes be signed by restaurants, and we're thrilled for them. So that's fun and exciting that they get to eat good food. But just from a supplement standpoint, making sure that they're good to go. Because that's something that we are definitely concerned about as a staff. And we just want to make sure that our athletes do what's best for them.
Yeah. So you put those guidelines in place and say, these are recommended guidelines. And
right.
Is there going to be pressure from your staff on the sidelines to make sure you have 25 different supplements now I mean, does the branding go that far where it's like, hey, I have to take this during a game now as well? I mean, does that exponentially cause an issue for you when it comes to those athletes that have maybe 8 different athletes with 8 different sponsors? Or is there controls in place for that?
Yes. And it's still like a learning process for us. But as far as I understand, is that they can't do it with they can't do anything that interferes with our big sponsorships, if that makes sense. So necessarily, we are a Powerade and Muscle Milk school. Sorry, Kortney, I know that may hurt you a little bit, but we are a Powerade school here. So
hashtag Powerade Muscle Milk
school. And but Muscle Milk, and Gatorade, they go together. But anyways, but we are that. So we wouldn't necessarily have like Gatorade for an athlete on the sideline when we're a Powerade school, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So there shouldn't be any conflict there. However, I feel like this changes every day. So by the time you post the podcast, it could be a different rule by then. But that's to our understanding, is that there shouldn't be any direct conflict when it comes to like the sideline and pregame meal and any of those kind of team atmosphere. It's more so what they can do when they're not wearing that jersey or whatever jersey of school that they're at.
It's similar to the pros then. I mean, if you're taking the cues from the pros, right? I mean, you can have a shoe contract, but if Adidas supports your pro team, you're going to be wearing Adidas on the field. You're not going to be,
Yes, very
popping
simple.
Okay.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
Question cool. on the influencer side of things, and this is just like I don't know if an influencer is peddling a certain thing, a shoe, a supplement, or whatever, but they don't actually take it. They're just shelling for the thing, right? Does anyone really care? Do their followers actually think that they're using this because they want to, whatever, that they're not getting paid? And that's just like, where's the ethical guideline on this? And I'm just curious. Like, if you found out that somebody that you like that's using a certain product, and you go, wow, that's really great, and I want to support them, I'll take the product. And then it turns out they never even use it. Does anyone care? I'm just curious on that.
I would hope that our athletes still, or any athlete, honestly, in the NCAA, that they wouldn't sign with a suspect supplement company, essentially because they are role models to our upcoming athletes in high school, middle school, whenever. I would hate for, in high school athlete out there to see a star quarterback at whatever school and be like, oh, well, he took that to be the star quarterback. Like, I'm going to take that, or whatever other sports, or that gymnastics girl, she is amazing. Like, I want to take that to be just like her. And I would just hate for one of our athletes to do that. And then, future athletes just not be in a good situation.
Yeah. So giving them some kind of ethical guidelines. I mean, I would never recommend a product or something that I didn't use myself to my athletes. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm a Picky Bars ambassador. It's only because I eat Picky Bars. I love them. I think they're great, right? It's great fuel. I use them at certain times. So I will advocate for them, but I wouldn't advocate for something that I didn't actually use. So I'm just curious on that, how people would react.
I think also at the same time, it can be twofold as well, because I think, the placebo effect is real, right? So some of these athletes might actually believe that it is working. Like, remember that whole push with alkaline water? I mean, really, truly. how many athletes are sponsored by? Yeah. Like, how many athletes are sponsored by?
I should get rid of my alkaline water.
Yeah, I was going to say awkward.
Excuse me a second. Yeah. That's not nice. Oh.
Because they actually feel it's doing something for them. So, I mean, at one point they could, like, the placebo effect is real for them, and they actually might believe that that product is doing something for their body when it actually isn't. Secondly, you would hope that, the ethical tie to that, just like you said, Tom, was, like, you're not going to promote a product that you don't believe in. We feel the same way at Hyden Beach. Jaden feels the same way at FSU, but not everybody is like us, right? Money talks, right? So if there is a product and they're willing to put, $100,000 towards an athlete, how can you say no? Some athletes might not have the, financial ability to say no to something like that. So they might just, say yes, and then, they might not take the product, but it is attached to them. So it can muddy the waters a little bit and does make all of our positions a little bit tougher.
I think the hard part, though, Jaden, is also when we talked originally about, are you pushing weight because that's what's required for your position, or are you doing it now because it's not just a product? You're promoting your image, your likeness now. You're promoting how you look, and obviously, people want to have good-looking spokespeople for their products. So do you foresee sort of an issue with that, which is you're doing the vanity weights in order to make sure that your social feed looks good and you look good in a bathing suit, or do you do it because that, like you said, body types are different? Do you anticipate some of those people maybe making choices that could be detrimental to their performance because they have to look good?
Unfortunately, I do think it will be an issue. Just my personal standpoint, I do think we will see more issues arise like that. But just hopefully those conversations and those trusts with the athletes can kind of bring them back to, okay, why are we here? What are our core values? But like Kortney said, if someone that looks good is making millions of dollars on Instagram, it's really hard to have those conversations like, oh, wait, but if I look that way, will I make that much money? So it's just, I think it's definitely going to be a struggle in the future, but it's just making sure that we stick to our core values and helping the athletes realize, okay, why are we here? What are we doing? We're here to be a good athlete. We're here to excel at the next level. We're here to get a college education. And just making sure that we're here for the right reasons, not necessarily the social media standpoint, but I think it's going to be a very tough battle for everyone.
So here's a question on I'll refer to it as old school coaching. Have you, either of you, had any professional or personal experience where you've had old school coaches that said, you need to lose weight, right? You're too fat. And it had nothing to do with your performance. It's just, that's what their idea of the perfect athlete in whatever sport needs to be a certain size. And I know it happens in female sports quite a bit. At least it used to happen quite a bit. It sounds like both of you are in organizations that respect that the body is going to be what the body shape is regardless, and the performance is all that matters. But what advice would you give to female athletes or male athletes out there that are in a slightly toxic environment where they're playing for sport and they have a coach that's kind of pushing them to lose weight, and it's affecting their performance, and then they're getting in trouble for not performing well, but they're going back? It becomes this mental, psychological beatdown that they're getting. I mean, how do they get out of that? How do they deal with that or respond to it?
That's what it does happen. And first off, the athlete comes first. So if it is a situation that's happening, I always speak with the athlete. Okay, hey, what's going on? Okay, coach is saying you need to lose weight, or mom is saying I need to lose weight, or someone in their support system is saying that they need to lose weight. Okay, all right. Do you feel like you need to lose weight? What is your best playing weight? How are you playing now? Because scale number does not matter. As what you're doing on the field, the court, if you're swimming, whatever it is, as long as your performance is good, the scale weight doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sometimes we have a lot of athletes that get really caught up in body fat percentages. So especially when like the combine and all that fun stuff comes around, they're like, oh, well, he's 7% body fat. What am I? So stuff like that. So a lot of times people get caught up in those numbers, but those numbers don't mean anything if you're not playing well. So our physical and mental ability are what we care about most about our athletes. So, but it still does happen. It happens all over the place. And so first off, like I said, meeting that athlete, figuring out where they are, what weight they're playing best at, and how we can get to that weight or maintain that weight. And if it becomes a consistent issue, that's usually when I speak to the person. So if it's like a coach on them or a mom on them, it's like, okay, like I will be involved in the conversation. We also, here at Florida State, as well as when I was at Alabama, we had sports psychologists that also helped with that situation as well. But there are still coaches out there like that. Luckily at Florida State, we haven't worried about that too much, but just working with that athlete, figuring out where they need to be, and then approaching that conversation. So those conversations are different based on if it's mom or uncle or sister, whoever it is, versus coach. But it's finding out individualized ways to have those conversations and those hard conversations, and making sure that athlete is okay physically and mentally to have those.
I like it. Guys, this has been a fun conversation. I've already got 3 other podcast ideas on what we need to be talking about. We haven't even touched on the mental aspect of sort of, one of the things that we're trying to do on recovery is making sure you're not just physically recovering, but you're also mentally kind of detuning. And how do you do that? And that, again, probably a whole nother conversation. So Jaden and Kortney, I really appreciate your time today. Jaden, what do you got going on? What do you have coming up?
Well, fall is amongst us, and I can't believe it's already here. So right now, basketball is doing some training in the off season, men's and women's. But fall camps are right around the corner. Here at Florida State, I work with the soccer team, so they will start their preseason camp here soon. So that will be exciting times. I don't know if y'all follow collegiate soccer, but the women's soccer team here is unreal amazing. So we'll be working with them, and also we'll get stuff started off, and I'll pass my torch over to Kortney, but Hyden Beach will also have some stuff starting up here as well soon. So
cool. Kortney, what do you have going on?
Well, we're actually in the heart of our season. So nationals are going on right now, basically the whole month of July. So a lot of our players are traveling all over the country to play in different types of national tournaments for the high school level. And then a lot of our girls will be going off to college. I believe we have 6 of our Hyden Beach girls going off to college this year.
Cool.
So even about 6 weeks or so, I think even maybe a little bit less. So just preparing them and making sure they feel comfortable playing at the collegiate level. And then, during later August and September, we'll probably have a little bit of a dip down, and then we'll pick back up once the indoor season is done for high school. So we're kind of in the heart of it right now. Busy running around all over the country, making sure our girls are prepped and ready to go.
Cool.
Nice. Very cool. So thank you both for being on here. This has been fantastic conversations. Kenny said, I think we'll have to revisit this and have some more, some breakout sessions, some other future podcasts I think would be fantastic. And I want to thank everybody for listening. Give your reviews. 5 stars would be fantastic. If not, please let us know why. We'd love to. So the more reviews and the more comments that we get helps us and also helps the algorithm so that more people can find these podcasts, and we can keep doing this and we can get better. So once again, thank you guys very much. We appreciate both of you for being on here. Kenny, always, it's been good. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.